Yes, guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video. I tell you what, there is always something going on in the world of Newcastle. Obviously, we had an awful game at the weekend. Loads of talk on the pitch. Players not turning up. Eddie Howe in question. 3-1 loss against West Ham. And we want to put that right tomorrow night back at St James's Park under the lights in the Champions League. And I think we'll do it. I think we will win tomorrow night. So if you're not subscribed, be sure to do so. I will be at the game tomorrow. All the usual pre-match, post-match reactions. And then, the big question comes this weekend against Brentford to see if we can get a win away from home in the Premier League as well. But today's video is based on off the pitch. Our backroom staff is like a game of musical chairs. Darren Eales, Paul Mitchell, Dan Ashworth, Peter Silverstone, the chief commercial officer, has been reported to be leaving the football club. We'll talk a little bit about him in a minute as well. And some more positive news. Reports coming out that the new director of football, Ross Wilson, will have the green light from the PIF with regard to spend this upcoming January window. Yeah, so we'll touch on Peter Silverstone first. Obviously, a man who was brought in at the time of Darren Eales, at the time of Dan Ashworth. He was, I guess, part of the old guard. Could you look at this as David Hopkinson's come in, the new CEO, brought in Ross Wilson as the new director of football. Peter Silverstone, is this a David Hopkinson? He said when he came in, he was going to mix things up. He said he was going to do his review of staff. He said he was going to find out what people were doing, and he was going to try and bring the club to where he wanted to be. Has Peter Silverstone felt the force of that and has now been asked to take a step in a different direction? You have to argue that despite Peter Silverstone first coming in, and making a few, I think, did he come in and we got the Saudi Air deal like the next day? That deal is, I guess, with the Saudis, that's with the PIF, that's with a known connection. Outside of that, what have we done? I guess Red Bull, Monster energy drinks, but I don't know, I don't think we've really felt the full force of what we could have had in terms of commercial revenue under Silverstone. And this isn't me just kind of bringing up stuff to kind of throw at him. It's hard to tell sometimes. We can't see behind the scenes. We can't always see who's in charge of what and whose job's to do this. What we do know, and I think as fans have spoken about a lot, is that we haven't had the training ground sponsor. We haven't had the training kit sponsors. We haven't had the stadium sponsors. Instead, what we felt is increases in cup game prices, increases in season ticket prices, the whole digital ticketing system, which has just been a complete pain in the backside for a lot of fans. Memberships realistically feel like they're only there to allow people the chance of getting a ticket. Like, memberships for me doesn't really bring any benefit of like a monthly parcel through the door or a monthly subscription to a magazine, or there's been so much touted to this membership being all singing, all dancing, but in reality it just gives people a step back. You pay £50 and you might get one or two tickets a season. So yes, there's my very quick overview on Peter Silverstone. I feel like the opportunities were there. I think it's easy for me as a fan to say, well, we should have done this and the membership should be better and we should have done that. In reality, maybe it's a lot tougher to do all those things, and it quite well maybe. But as reported today, Peter Silverstone is he's now on gardening leave. So he has actually, as reported, technically left the football club now, on gardening leave as he looks for an opportunity further afield. So that they've taken the decision, or whether it's himself who's agreed a mutual decision to leave, or whether it's the club themselves, but they don't want him hanging around. They're not saying, oh yeah, work off your notice, work the next 2 months. They've said, no, we're going to move on now and we're going to find a new opportunity. So whether David Hopkinson has just looked at everything I've just mentioned and decided to take action, or it's just a different fit. You know, it was a Darren Eales guy. Darren Eales brought in, Darren Eales, you know, was a Dan Ashworth man. Darren Eales was a Peter Silverstone man. David Hopkinson looks to be a Ross Wilson man, new director of football, and clearly not a Peter Silverstone man. So you can let me know your thoughts down below. Have I just underrated Peter Silverstone there? Has he done more for this football club than maybe I've given him credit for? You know, you could look at the likes of the stack, I suppose. You would imagine that maybe he had a part to play in that, and that has been a huge success. I think it's easy to pick up on things that maybe as a fan I've not been overly impressed with and then chuck the blame at him. Maybe it's not even up to him, but as the commercial director, you would assume that things like training ground sponsors, etc., would fall on him, and the membership side of things, you'd imagine, is in his ballpark and hasn't worked for me. But regardless of potentially the lack of commercial deals and commercial revenue, it looks like Ross Wilson will get an opportunity to flex his muscles this upcoming January, as reports are coming out to say that the PIF have given a green light on spend this January window. And it's funny, isn't it? Because off the back of a very poor game on Sunday, where despite us talking about having this improved squad and players available, and then, you know, Wizard isn't available, Langer isn't playing the way we hoped he would be, Hall's unavailable, Livermento's unavailable. I was like, oh my God, we've just spent a fair bit of money this summer and it's not quite cutting the mustard. I think it's fair enough to have a larger squad, but I still feel like we rely heavily on key players. And I guess that's all football teams. You're always going to have your best player. You're always going to have a Tonali or a Bruno. And if they're unavailable, you just won't play as good. You know, that's football. Every team will have a Cole Palmer or a Salah or whatever. Every team will have a player. We've got it. But I just feel like we still rely on one or two or three many players in a game. And if one or two don't turn up, we'll struggle for answers. You know, I think Eddie Howe bringing off Voltamada, Gordon at half-time was I think people have said, was it too quick to do so? Like, did we really need to take them off? I think Eddie Howe was well within his right to take them off because I thought they were terrible. No, that's harsh. Gordon was terrible. Voltamada struggled to get into the game. I would argue he got taken off too soon. But as Eddie Howe said, he said he could have taken anybody off. I think Eddie Howe wanted to make a point more than anything that the game needed to be changed. But we didn't have the answers. And that could be down to the personnel, the game, and how people were playing over the quality on the bench. But you have to say that we could do with a little bit of extra something. And reports coming out that I guess despite the spend, you know, going into the summer window, we were told we had money to spend, and then on deadline day, went and got ourselves an extra 130 million. So you have to argue that there is money available there for us, and Ross Wilson, the new director of football, having the opportunity to give, you know, talks of Tonali, not a new contract now, because he signed a secret one for an extra 2 years, an improved contract. You know, I would argue that off the back of Sunday, I don't know that many of them deserve one. So we'll wait and see on that. But yes, good news to hear that Ross Wilson coming in, new director of football, working with Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe seems fairly keen to work with him, unlike what was the Paul Mitchell situation. There seems to be a bit of harmony behind the scenes there. It looks like David Hopkinson is trying to create more harmony. I think maybe letting go of a Silverstone who was part of the old guard. It does just feel like that musical chairs of Newcastle United, which I'm not a massive fan of. But you hope now that this is kind of the new era of the backroom staff. We've brought in the new CEO. We've brought in the new director of football. Someone new on the commercial front will hopefully grab it by the scruff of the neck. You know, not just waiting around for PIF to go, oh, well, we found you a new one. You know, this Saudi Arabian Airlines, you can have a deal with them. No, let's go out and find some Adidas, I guess, actually. You know, was that before Silverstone or was that during Silverstone? I think we have brought deals in. But I think the fans wanted more, or I think there was more that could have been done. So, yes. Thoughts and comments down below. Is this just a case of Hopkinson moving for the men that he wants, or do you think Silverstone deserves to go? Are you excited to see Ross Wilson spend some money this upcoming January window? Is there a position If you are happy to see Ross Wilson spend some money this January, drop a like on this video, get the likes rolling. And is there a position that you think Newcastle should look at in this January? Right, guys, that was a quick one from me in the car. Thanks for watching. I'll be back again tomorrow night for the Champions League game under the lights. Get ourselves back on track. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch us later.